Whimsicott can just be used to chip away at some of these Pokemon. So I'm looking at some big hit point pools on the other side for Juan Salerno, but instead it's going to be the traditional Maushold and Annihilate combination here to lead up against the Ursaluna Blood Moon and the Dragonite.
And this Maushold is holding Taunt, so can decide to shut down Tailwind or possibly the Yawn from the Ursaluna Blood Moon, which, if Julio is worried that Juan is going to try and slow things down with some Yawns, forcing Julio to switch, maybe not take advantage of the immediate benefits of a beat up into that Annihilate, it will still keep Rage Fist boosts when you switch it around, but if you're switching it around, you can't really attack, so that would be the benefit of that. You can go straight for that Taunt and ensure that at least you have a couple of turns here. You could also shut down Protects, which if you do decide to immediately invest in your Annihilate with, let's say, a Fairy Terra, that's a great way to ensure it's going to be able to hit the target it wants.
Absolutely. This Annihilate is very happy to go for the Terastallization into the Fairy Terra, knowing that now that the Dragonite on the other side cannot damage the Annihilate. There's the taunt from Maushold, but it's actually blocked by the Protect from the Ursaluna. So Juan preventing a taunt coming out from the Maushold, but that just means that it is giving over a bulk up to Annihilate. Scale Shot appropriately targets down the Maushold, doing 31 damage per Scale Shot, which means Maushold will survive barring a critical hit, even if there are 5 hits of the Scale Shot. There it is. Maushold just barely hanging on with 27 hit points now, so still able to protect the Annihilate or shut down the Yawn and the Protects from that Ursaluna.
But after the speed boost from that Dragonite, it's possible that it will just be faster than the Maushold, which will limit its options for the upcoming turn. You could always go for the Protect on the Annihilate and try and sneak in a Taunt, but I think the more consistent play would be to go for Follow Me and then try to follow it up with damage, as you did just bulk up, you do have your own attack boost.
Yep, that is a free bulk up from the Annihilate, so the Maushold will try to protect its friend, the Annihilate, but Juan not giving over the free switch to Giulio. Instead, a Yawn will connect onto Maushold, and the Dragonite is able to set up the Tailwind. However, that does mean that Annihilate is able to get a big Drain Punch off onto the Ursaluna. After one bulk up, that turns that into a 2-hit KO, and if this Annihilate ever starts taking damage, that Ursaluna just kind of becomes a health pack for that Pokemon.
It does, and I think more importantly, it would be taking damage from the Ursaluna itself, as the Dragonite's best option if it wants to stay on the field would be to haze away the attack and defense boost that Annihilate has.
That is certainly an option that this Dragonite now has, and will need to make something happen, but I really love leaving the Maushold on the field right now. It really puts the pressure on Giulio to make a choice here. Do you want to sacrifice this Maushold or just leave it as dead weight here? Or do you try to switch it out and maybe lose some momentum?
Well, I do think we are going to see a switch here from Julio after the grassy terrain is set up, and interestingly enough, you mentioned Maushold or Whimsicott earlier on. What if you could have both?
Why not both?
Exactly, and had there been a Scale Shot into that spot to pick up the KO, Whimsicott's Fairy typing would have kept it nice and safe.
Yeah, double Fairy types on the field now, so Dragonite preemptively retreating, making sure that it does not get caught staring down 2 Fairy types on the field. It does mean that Rillaboom is now out on the field and could exert some Fake Out pressure, but Fake Out can only target one of these Pokemon, and that means that Whimsicott has the ability to either go on the offense itself or set up the Tailwind, or you're sacrificing damage into either your Ursaluna or Rillaboom here. Juan will opt for the damage onto the Annihilate. The Moonblast deals a little bit of damage, but the Yawn now connects onto the Annihilate. So Annihilate will get drowsy, will flinch and not attack this time, and may be forced to switch out.
I think it's definitely going to be forced to switch out, unfortunately, as that is the one Pokemon that you can't let go to sleep. Even though it's very comfortable on the field right now, it hasn't taken a lot of damage, does have that defense boost to help it wither some of these larger attacks from the Rillaboom on the opposing side of the field. Sleep is one of those status effects where you don't know when you're going to wake up beyond you're going to be asleep for one guaranteed turn, and I don't think that's a risk you can necessarily make here. Whimsicott will be able to keep up some of the momentum depending on how Julio wants to play this, He certainly could take a risk and try and go for a big attack, but I don't know if the Annihilate going to sleep is going to be worth this amount of damage.
Well, that's good damage onto the Annihilate. Citrus Berry will heal it right back up just a little bit, as well as Grassy Terrain at the end of this turn. Beat Up connects from the Whimsicott onto Annihilate, boosting the power of that Rage Fist, which should be plenty now after the Fake Out, plus the Wood Hammer, plus these Beat Ups to max out that Rage Fist and take out a KO onto this Rillaboom. But that's only if it can move before the Ursaluna, which gets a huge Blood Moon, and all of that energy, all of that effort that Giulio has put into that Annihilate is now gone.
What a tough decision to make there, because knowing how Juan played that was very clever. You either switch out the Annihilate, you lose your boosts to avoid the Yawn, to avoid being put to sleep, but then whatever comes in is going to be taking two of the most powerful attacks he has on his team with the combination of the Wood Hammer and the Blood Moon. Unfortunately for Giulio, that would have either been a Mouse Hold or the Incineroar, which would have had the best odds of taking the attack, or would have just been guaranteed to be knocked out so that the Annihilate could have come immediately back in, which I think would have been a much better trade for that turn. But I do think it's good for him to note that for the future, that's how Juan will use that move.
Absolutely. That is definitely a good piece of information for Giulio to remember going into our second game. The Incineroar does threaten the Rillaboom, so it does have to switch out here. The Dragonite will come back out onto the field while Ursaluna protects. So Juan just trying to do a little bit of scouting here to see what kind of attacks Giulio wants to go for. Still trying to target down that Ursaluna. Now this Incineroar is definitely feeling like it needs to get that Pokemon off the field because it is the most threatening Pokemon. The Dragonite especially, you can leave alone, sort of, because the Whimsicott is going to be able to wall it in the end. But until then, it's going to be able to take out all of the Pokemon next to Whimsicott, and Giulio's really looking for an opening here, and Juan is not giving him one.
Yeah, it's a very tough spot for Giulio to be in. I think Whimsicott using Moonblast is the best move of choice here if you decide to go on the attack. Tailwind would allow you to outspeed for a turn, but the parting shot into the Mouse Hold would not be the best play. So maybe you get a special attack drop here? No.
You really want that special attack drop. As the Tailwind goes up, that means that this Blood Moon Ursaluna has the ability to fire back with a Blood Moon. That's going to drop the Whimsicott down to its Focus Sash. Of course, Juan realizing that that Pokemon needs to go away for him to not be walled by the Fairy typing, and the knockoff isn't enough to pick up the KO. Does get the leftovers off of the Blood Moon Ursaluna, which would be really important earlier on in the game, but it's already recovered so much health from that item and the Grassy Terrain that it's just not quite enough.
And Juan making sure to bring down the Whimsicott to the Focus Sash only in a position where Giulio cannot use Endeavor comfortably. So very well managed by Juan.
There's the Scale Shot connecting onto Incineroar, so we'll deal good damage to that Pokemon as it did not get intimidated. Over 50%, well over 50% with that fifth hit of the Scale Shot. If Juan can land another one of those on Incineroar, that Pokemon definitely will be going down. That being said, Whimsicott has the opportunity to finish off the Ursaluna with that Moonblast, and the defense drop does open up some damage onto the Dragonite from the Incineroar. There's the knockoff connecting and deals a decent amount of damage, drops the loaded dice, which could become relevant if it only can get one hit of the loaded dice when it connects, but the Sneasler coming out should be enough to wrap this up for Juan Salerno.
Yeah, even though there's no more Grassy Terrain in play and the Grassy Seed will not activate, Acrobatics with the Tailwind boost alone, close combat would be enough for Juan to seal this up. So very comfortably winning game number one there. I think Giulio had a very strong start with that Annihilate, but it was that turn after the Yawn where it was just taken down by the Wood Hammer and Blood Moon that really put Juan in the driver's seat of that game one.
Yeah, Giulio played a little bit too fast and loose with that Annihilate, especially after investing the Terastallization, bringing both beat up users, so 2 slots on your team, and then the Incineroar just didn't have enough damage to make up for it in the end. So if you're going to be going all in on Annihilate, that Pokemon needs to be picking up multiple KOs, and it didn't pick up a single one.
Exactly. So going into game number 2, that does make the adjustment, I think, very comfortable to make. You know, Mouse Hold, great Pokemon, great partner for Annihilate. I don't think it's the right partner for this matchup. Whimsicott just had a lot more utility, still has beat up. we saw just how much that Moonblast did in the offensive category, and can match the Tailwind as well from that Dragonite. I think it's the better Pokemon to bring, and that does open up the opportunity for you to bring another attacker on your side of the field.
Yeah, which could be the Golden Go or the Tyranitar or the other options available. And there it is. That's going to be the Whimsicott lead next to the Annihilate to ditch the Mouse Hold, bring the Whimsicott in, still have the beat-up pressure, but also now have the Tailwind pressure as well, facing down the Dragonite and Ursaluna once again. Annihilate should feel pretty good. The one thing that you're missing is you no longer have the taunt pressure, so you will take a yawn.
But you can also go immediately on the offense against that Ursaluna. So if you were to, say, land a Drain Punch in it now alongside of a Moonblast and then switch out the Pokemon that's targeted by Yawn, that is a way around it.
Yeah, or an Endeavor potentially would bring it down to a decent position. But the Moonblast deals a little bit of chip there. The Drain Punch following up, not enough to pick up the KO with both of them. But Tailwind from Dragonite using the Terrestrialization to make sure that the Annihilate cannot be knocked out in a single hit here. Here comes the Yawn, and without the bulk up, it feels much safer to switch out the Annihilate. Although, like you've mentioned, Juan may just want to use this as an opportunity to target whatever's switching in.
But a Scale Shot in a Blood Moon is way less scary than a grassy terrain Wood Hammer in a Blood Moon. If it's the Incineroar in back, you at least have a chance of taking that. And if you just catch one of those Pokemon switching out and the Rillaboom coming in, landing the Intimidate on that Rillaboom, I think is a fair trade for taking a Blood Moon.
Absolutely. The Dragonite knows that it can't really do much of anything here, so will switch out to the Rillaboom. That's the power of these Fairy Terrestrializations in a Dragonite meta. Golden Go is actually the Pokemon that will be brought out instead of the Incineroar, and will tank this Blood Moon. So we'll still hit the Golden Go, but with the Steel typing resistant, and that's a good resistance for the Blood Moon, especially since this is a leftovers Golden Go. So while the Ursaluna is going to be recovering a lot of health, the Golden Go is going to be recovering the same amount of health.
And also a great adaptation for Giulio, as it is able to deal damage to the Ursaluna. It's able to not worry as much about taking those big attacks from the Rillaboom, and with enough time on the field, it could even go for some nasty plots to boost up its own stats and become a threat in its own right.
Yeah, and this is also now the third Pokemon Giulio has shown that is hostile to that Dragonite. 2 Fairy types now because of the Terrestrialization and a Steel type. That makes it really difficult for the Dragonite to get going, but it's actually going to be a switch in for the Annihilate as Whimsicott tries to keep picking away at that Ursaluna. A Wood Hammer on the switch, and is this exactly what happened in Game 1 happening again? Connects onto the Annihilate. The Citrus Berry will activate and will heal it up just a little bit, but if that was targeted down once more by the Ursaluna, it's the Earth Power this time, and it's not enough. Annihilate survives with 5 hit points, and that will put it into Grassy Glide range, obviously, but crucially, it has not gone down yet.
That was such an interesting switch for Giulio there. That Golden Go honestly felt very comfortable in that position. Yes, Earth Power is a threat, but with the speeds relatively tied on the field, and again, with that Rillaboom not guaranteeing a one-hit knockout onto that Pokemon, I was assuming that the Make It Rain would have been a decent play there, but I think Giulio just trying to use this Whimsicott as a key offensive piece in this position, and just not quite finding what he wants to get out of it.
Yeah, and here's the Golden Go actually coming out now from Juan's side, and the Annihilate just stays on the field and tanks a Grassy Glide. So less was invested into the Annihilate this time before it went down, but that was still the Terrestrialization invested. So unless Giulio just doesn't want to Terra any of his other Pokemon, and he's just showing that from the jump, then that was some resources invested for really no benefit here.
Yeah, it's a very tough spot for him to be in now, as he does have a lot of ground to make up. Fortunately, a Nasty Plot Golden Go is one of the Pokemon that can make up that ground given the opportunity, but you now have to find a way through the opposing Golden Go and through the opposing Rillaboom to get there. And while the Whimsicott will be able to keep speed relatively in your control thanks to those Tailwinds, as long as the Dragonite is not present on the field, I do wonder if this Incineroar will be able to find the right Pokemon to target with an attack to, again, start getting that momentum back on Giulio's side.
Yeah, well, the Golden Goat coming in instead of the Whimsicott, so Giulio now has some real damage threats on the board. This Incineroar also threatening real damage into that Golden Goat, but here comes the Ursaluna once again as trying to get as much, like sneak in as many bites of that apple as it can on the leftovers and the grassy terrain, but with the Protect, Golden Goat is once more protected from the knockoff, and you don't have Tailwind up right now, so you just kind of have a really awkward position here where Giulio has the leftovers Golden Go. You have to imagine that's trained to be bulkier than and slower than the Life Orb variant of Golden Go.
I would assume, yes, because you typically want to take advantage of your leftovers for as many turns possible, which just lends itself naturally to bulk. That being said, if you are naturally bulky, maybe that means you can take a Shadow Ball from the opposing Golden Go before there are any nasty plots in play. There is still that Ursaluna on the other side of the field, though, and we've seen Juan be very comfortable double targeting the Pokemon that is the big threat on the opposing side of the field, and right now for Juan that will be the Golden Go.
Yeah, absolutely, the Golden Go is the big damage threat left remaining on Giulio's team. That's going to force a Terastallization coming out from Juan's Golden Go. Instead of being a Ghost and Steel type, it is now a pure Water type, which means it is no longer as afraid of knockoffs or Shadow Balls, and does indeed move faster than the Golden Go, and the power of the Life Orb is enough to pick up the KO. Giulio just did not expect that, clearly, leaving the Pokemon out there to tank that Shadow Ball in this knockoff, not dealing near enough damage to pick up a KO, knocks off the Life Orb, but this Earth Power is going to trade so much damage right back, and look, you know I love offensive Whimsicott. I don't know that that little puffball has enough offense to take down the 4 remaining Pokemon on Juan Salerno's team.
As much as I would love to say that where there's an endeavor, there is a way, given that both of Juan's Pokemon on the opposing side of the field have access to spread moves at this point in time, Whimsicott will be able to get one attack in or a Tailwind if it decides, but ultimately it will be able to take the 2 hits needed, one to break the sash, the other one to get that final KO. And even though Giulio,
here's a start.
Yeah, this is a start, but I don't know if it's going to be enough ultimately.
Yeah, by not going on the offensive, protecting the Golden Go and not protecting the Ursaluna, that does open up for Giulio to get the targeting correct and knocks out the Ursaluna with that combination of the Moonblast and the knockoff. But here, with the Rillaboom switching in, there is no opportunity to protect, no Terastallization available for Whimsicott to avoid the fake out. That just means that it is absolutely going to have to take this Make It Rain. That will be a clean knockout on that Pokemon, and Incineroar at 22 hit points does not have the damage to get through these remaining 3 Pokemon.
Julio showing just a very neat team there with that Annihilate, the Whimsicott, and the Maushold, but I think ultimately just did not find the opportunities that Annihilate needed, and Incineroar able to get a KO here,
Stylish.
But not enough.
Yeah, the Flare Blitz KO into Rillaboom means that Incineroar goes down, but takes Rillaboom with it, and Juan Salerno, in really dominant fashion here in our 6th round of Swiss, is going to punch his ticket into Phase 2, going 6-0 in our first 6 rounds of Swiss.
And really incredibly well played there, just making some amazing reads with his Pokemon, with that Ursaluna Blood Moon in particular, making sure those Blood Moon attacks just landed on the right target exactly when they needed to. And, you know, given that that attack is one of them where you can only use it once every other turn, and it's such a valuable resource in that regard, being able to confidently call your targets and being able to make sure that that damage not only just counts, but sticks is so important. Yeah,
it not only counts and sticks, but also was picking up huge threats. They weren't going into the Mausholds of the world, they were going into the Annihilate, which clearly Giulio was trying to invest a lot of resources in, was focusing the team and the 4 Pokemon that he was bringing in both games around, but he played so aggressively with that Annihilate, and Juan just called him on it every step of the way.